The coastal areas of the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area are recognised for having significant natural and cultural values arising from high rainfall, spectacular geomorphology, diversity of flora and fauna, and outstanding Aboriginal heritage values. The Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area is a cultural heritage landscape with evidence of the continuous occupation of Tasmanian Aboriginal people, including hut depressions, high-density midden deposits, petroglyphs, and known burial sites. Because of the significance of its Aboriginal cultural heritage values, much of the coastal areas of the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area have been listed as a National Heritage Place, known as the Western Tasmanian Aboriginal Cultural Landscape. Most of the original off-road tracks have ongoing deterioration, meaning users have to divert from the established tracks to avoid major hazards. These diversion tracks are leading to a wider impact on the values of the area. These impacts include damage to Aboriginal cultural heritage sites, such as petroglyphs, rock carvings and middens, degradation of geoconservation sites, such as blanket bogs and sand dunes, and the destruction of threatened shorebird nesting sites. Currently, four-wheel drive users in the area are required to purchase a $30 recreational vehicle permit to access the track network in the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area, with the conditions of the permit stating that they are required to stay on the designated tracks stated on the permit. However, enforcement of these conditions is difficult as Parks and Wildlife Service has limited resources in the area and is not always able to send rangers down to these remote areas for compliance, which has led to many permit holders driving outside the designated areas, largely without penalty. The Tasmanian Government has just released the West Coast Off-Road Vehicle Strategy to manage access to the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area. The Tasmanian Government has committed $10 million to support priority initiatives for off-road vehicle access and experiences within the area and reserves across the West Coast. The strategy includes upgrades to existing four-wheel drive tracks in the area, including the Sandy Cape and Balfour tracks, as well as the building of official campgrounds, toilets and barbecues in the more remote areas to cater for a greater number of people accessing the area. Consultation with the local Tasmanian Aboriginal community found that the objective of sustainability was perceived as unattainable by the community, mainly due to the ongoing impact of off-road driving activities on cultural values. There was a consensus that the strategy appears to primarily benefit the off-road driving community and local users, with insufficient focus on the protection of natural and cultural values. The statewide Tasmania Aboriginal Land Council, TALC, was also not involved with the development of the strategy. Instead, only the nearby Circular Head Aboriginal Corporation, known as CHAC, was consulted in the development of the strategy. The TALC and many other Tasmanian Aboriginal community recommend that the government allocate funds for the employment of Aboriginal field officers to protect and manage cultural heritage on the West Coast. This may be a much more effective management measure that could be taken to protect the cultural sites on and near the four-wheel drive tracks and educate the track users about the cultural significance of these sites. Degradation risk assessment of four-wheel driving in the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area found that the area had a final weighted score of 305, which meant it had a high degradation risk. One of the highest scoring areas was proximity to activities with potential to cause degradation, because most of the sites were less than 50 metres from existing four-wheel drive tracks, with many tracks driving on top of cultural heritage sites. A constraints analysis was also conducted to identify the constraints to the West Coast Off-Road Vehicle Strategy. One of the main constraints was increased access to more four-wheel drives, the implication being that cultural heritage sites such as middens and rock carvings were much more likely to be driven over by inexperienced drivers. The suggested response was that they need to determine how to best protect the cultural heritage sites and four-wheel drives, and that they should block off the Aboriginal cultural heritage sites from existing tracks and increase ranger presence in the area.